I feel that if we have a product that somebody wants to buy before we even, like if we're exiting a company before creating it, then there's something having potential here. But founders were very, very protective of their equity, which I find actually people are a bit more relaxed about it in Southeast Asia.
Hey guys, Tim here. I'm here with Vivien Bresson, a French founder who has been in Southeast Asia for a while. She's currently the CEO and founder of a very interesting project called Scarlett Panda that she'll tell you more about, that allows people to generate stories using AI. And she's also a fractional CMO. Currently working out of Mexico City, but usually based out of Southeast Asia. So Vivien, do you want to give a quick introduction about yourself?
Yeah,
And
of
did I
course.
get it all correct?
Yes, thank you for the intro. So so I'm Vivienne. I worked in digital marketing for 14 years. I'm a third-time founder. I have a agency that's based in London. But most importantly, I have a AI company for children based out of Singapore called Scarlett Panda. And what Scarlett Panda does is that it leverages AI to create personalized stories for children with illustration, and also with the possibility of printing out the story to get physical books. So we kind of on a hybrid model between an app where you generate the stories and still the pleasure of getting like a book into your hands.
That sounds amazing. And so your agency in London, that's the fractional CMO agency, right?
Yes, so before Scarlett Panda, I was since 20. I moved into. I created a marketing agency in London from Europe, and then what happened is that mostly what we did for the agency was interim CMO roles for startup to scale up companies. Basically, you have a startup, they can't afford a full-time CMO yet. For them is that I will come in, build a team, train up the juniors, have them make some of the initial decisions, be there for them up until they get to the point where hopefully they get raised a decent Series A, and then they can hire somebody full-time. And then I would just leave, get to the new role.
I love it. Love it. And so I interview people that are, foreigners going to Southeast Asia or local Southeast Asians who are building stuff locally. As a foreign founder, so you came from France, you studied in France. I believe you started your career in Europe, as you mentioned. How did you end up in Southeast Asia? Where did you go? And tell me about that a little bit.
Yeah, sure. So, I started, I studied in France. I had a master's degree back in 2012, so it's been a while. And then I stayed in a French agency. It was at the moment what paid marketing was becoming a thing, like Google search. So I got quite lucky to just jump on board at something that was really starting off. And 4 years working with mostly clients in France, in Switzerland. I decided to move into a big corporate world. So I joined a company called the Hut Group in the north of the UK. It's an umbrella company for some brands, like the most famous ones are Look Fantastic, My Protein, Ilamasqua, etc. So they have like a portfolio of 80 brands. They since then have become a unicorn and have also IPO'd. But back at the time, they were doing great, but they weren't at that stage yet. And that's when I got on board to build that Western European team initially. It worked out quite well. I got a bunch of promotions. And then what happened on the back of it is that they were very, very interested in Asia. And to be honest, as ridiculous as this is going to sound, I was the closest of an Asian person that ever worked in that British company. So they
So
kind of
explain how you're close to an Asian. I'm very curious.
well, I wasn't British. I was kind of like the cutoff. And I
Okay, so
actually
a little east east
French.
of Great Britain, France is as close as it gets.
But at that
Love
point,
it.
the company was very, very deeply British. And then basically what happened is I just I was tasked to build a team. And I think one thing that I did quite well was that I actually hired people who used to work for Baidu or to Yandex in Russia, and Yahoo Japan, because I really did not know how to assess those skills. So I was like, okay, if these people work for those big companies, they do understand how to do marketing for them. And I built that team, and it worked out amazingly well. So as well as like basically Japan became the second biggest market of my protein. And Asia, like some of the biggest days we ever had were the Singles Day in China. And then we launched Thailand, we launched Malaysia, we launched Singapore, continued recruiting, and yeah, that worked very well. And at that point, I was just very, well, first of all, I realized that I had like maybe a natural talent for this like cross-cultural thing. And the other thing is
Mm-hmm.
just that I realized that I connected very well with the teams, and I started going on a holiday into Southeast Asia. And I think anybody like, some people don't like it, but a lot of people just literally fall in love with like that area of the world, whether it's the climate,
Mm-hmm.
the food, the people, the way cultures are happening. Like, so from that moment on, I had that in mind. It did not happen before another 2.5 years, because in the meantime I joined the Berlin startup scene, like became head of performance marketing in a different company, climbed the ladder a bit, and then that company got bankrupt. But I had some material
Mm.
that I could buy off it, and I teamed up with a different co-founder in Southeast Asia, and then I got there.
Amazing. And so the first country you ended up in Southeast Asia was Malaysia, right? Kuala Lumpur.
So technically it was Singapore, but as the adventure
Okay.
continues, I was in Malaysia when COVID happened. So I ended up in
Mm.
Malaysia instead.
Okay, amazing. And the way we know each other is we're both alumni of Iterative. You joined it with Become, so kind of like a well, describe Become a little bit so we understand how you built your first startup in Southeast Asia.
So Become the same, like was the same model as the one I had in my previous company in Berlin called fractional. Become is a teeth alignment company. So the biggest one that you might know from Southeast Asia would be one called Xenium. But it's also similar model to like Invisalign. So basically, what you have is if you have like a mild to medium correction of teeth, that like if your teeth are a little bit crooked but not crazy hard, then what you can do is
Mm-hmm.
basically plan a whole treatment in advance. So you would go to a cabinet, they would take a scan of your teeth, and what you would do is then you had the dentist like planning out all of the steps to align your teeth, and you would receive all of the different aligners that slightly move your teeth over a period of like 4 to 8 months, and then you
Okay.
were. It was a very good business model because at the time the main like competitor was Invisalign, which was like around $6,000-8,000, and because
Mm.
you could plan everything in advance, you could actually get results for $1. And yeah, the rest was a marketing game, getting people through.
Okay. And how did that go? I know it shut down now, but do you want to talk about the experience? What worked, what didn't?
I mean, it was doing pretty well by the time, at the time I was there. Like, I mean, again, marketing game. We kind of went, thanks to Iterative, we kind of went through that wave of COVID. For me, the reason I left because, well, COVID, I was still waiting on my like ability to going to Singapore to actually just kind of pick up my entrepreneur path. A lot of things I was just there in Malaysia, and as things, and like at the beginning of COVID, we all thought that maybe it was going to last 2 months, and then it was maybe 6 months, and I kind of like after the
Mm-hmm.
6 month period, Singapore wasn't really opening, so I've moved back to Europe, and it just because it was such an operational physical business to manage, like it's just not something that you could do that remotely, because I was also head of sales there, and I kind of needed to
Right.
be close to the teams. So at that point, we decided to part with my co-founder, and that's when I became a consultant.
Oh, I see. Okay, so then you decided that consulting would be a good way to, get through the COVID wave and start making some side income while you were thinking of your next move, basically.
There was a bit of that. I also like sold back my shares at the time, so I had a bit of cash power, which made me more comfortable
Okay.
moving into that consulting zone. And also I had some of our ex-angel investors who are based in Berlin, and as soon as
Mm.
I landed, they were also in the teeth industry, and they were like, "Hey, we want to launch these countries in Europe. Do you want to join as head of international expansion, something like that?" And I was like, "I won't do that, but because I'm not ready to commit." because I don't really know what I want to do next, but I can be a consultant
Mm-hmm.
for you. So I landed, I had a job, I had the ability, it was just
Mm.
paperwork. And then it was also like we were moving from 2020 to 20, which was the golden year of investment in all of these companies, which means that this like startup to scale up pool became huge. So a lot of people were
Mm.
looking into for this like interim fractional CMO type of role. So it was extremely like I had no problem with prospecting, and then I just kind of got comfortable into that position for like 3 years.
Yeah. I mean, it's nice. It's flexible. You get to have your head in different projects. So we've actually had an online conversation about this fractional momentum. Like, do you want to tell us a bit more about what a fractional CMO does, and like talk a little bit more about it so people who don't know the role, they understand better, either from a startup standpoint or from a consulting standpoint, what you can expect.
So I think I'm gonna put myself into the shoes of the founder who hires a fractional CMO. I think it's a good way of explaining it. Basically, let's say I'm a CEO. I'm pretty, like most CEOs, I'm a generalist. I know a lot of things. Maybe my first co-founder is somebody who's more on the operational side, or maybe it's somebody who's like, maybe I'm launching like some sort of skincare, and my co-founder is actually somebody who's more in the medical skin side. And at that
Mm-hmm.
stage, we raise a pre-seed, we're doing okay. But we understand that like our product needs marketing. But as a CEO, that's usually what happens. I'm going to give it a go because I think that marketing's not that hard. And then I'm going to realize that like it's extremely time consuming, and also what I'm doing is not working. But I do believe in my product. So why, I can sell it to investor. Why can't I sell it to the public? So usually what I'm
Mm-hmm.
going to do is I'm going to hire a junior, because I'm going to be like, okay, I'm going to try to solve the time problem first, which is like, okay, if I have
Mm-hmm.
somebody to execute, it's going to get better. And then I have this like junior, and then I realized that like it's great. I just took this young person, give them 10, 20, 50,000 USD to spend every month, and still like it's not really working. So that's the moment when I'm like,
Mm.
okay, well, who do I hire? Yes. And then I start looking for head of performance marketing, or I'm going to talk in Europe numbers. Might not be exactly the same in Southeast Asia, or CMO. And then I realized that the average head of performance marketing in Berlin is being paid 110,000 per year. And I'm there and I'm like, okay, I had a pre-seed. Am I really going to put 10, 20, 30% of that pre-seed into hiring someone to do this? And the answer is obviously not. And that's when the
Mm.
fractional CMO comes in, being like, okay, well, actually, with my junior being coached, or my juniors, I also wouldn't necessarily know, who to hire for these first roles. Like, do I need more content? Do I need more SEO? Do I need a brand person? What I
Mm-hmm.
can do is I can get a fractional CMO. And where fractional CMO is more interesting than just a consultant is that ideally you want somebody who's also hands-on. So you don't want somebody who just sits down
Mm-hmm.
1.5 hours to brainstorm with you. You hire somebody to be like, okay, well, I want you 8, 16, 25 hours per week. These are negotiated. Usually my average was 16 hours for a client per week. So like 2 good
Okay.
days. And yeah, can you please help me build my team? Can you recruit? Can you interview people? Can you tell me which skills I need? Can you set up the
Mm-hmm.
marketing reporting with me? And usually at that stage, you're like a small company, so you're only focusing on one market. There's no like the amount of work that needs to be done is big, but it's usually manageable between 1.5 or 2.5 people. So yeah, you bring this person on, and yeah, usually 9 out of 10 cases, what happened is that we parted after 1.5 to 2 years. When they raised and hired someone else, or when priorities changed, but that was pretty rare. Usually it's after raise.
Okay, so it's a pretty long commitment, like a year and a half average, 2 days a week. So you can probably take 2 to 3 clients on average, right? That's kind of what a fractional CMO would do. Yeah.
Yeah, that was my preference. Also got lucky, I'm gonna say, because I also got pregnant that year. So that was kind of like
Congrats.
not much traveling, not much drinking, well, no drinking at all actually. Not much like, so I had a lot of time on my hands of like, sitting around and not being able to do the things I usually do. Which means I was
Mm-hmm.
able to like yeah, work a lot. with different clients. And for me, what was very exciting is that, got to work with different industries, met a lot of people, and also like were able to like just get a lot of information about how those CEOs were raising, how they were envisioning things, the trends in general, valuations, and usually, because you're still some sort of C-level, people are pretty transparent with you,
Mm-hmm.
so you just gather. And
Mm-hmm.
tool-wise, it's also amazing because you just get to try. You get to try. It's like having an internship, an extremely well-paid internship in every single business. So like you get to try their data stack, their marketing stack, uh, and yeah, you come out with a lot of knowledge from every company does at least one thing right.
That's actually really interesting the way you look at it. And you mentioned it's a well-paid internship. So you established that the average chief marketing officer in a like a startup in Europe would make 100K, let's say. So as a fractional who works like let's say a third of that role, are you expected to be paid a third, or you can expect to be paid a bit more because you're not fully on board? Like what does someone who aspires to be a fractional CMO can expect to make per client, let's say?
It is harder now than what, because 2021 was a golden year for this. That being
Mm-hmm.
said, I am like, to be candid about numbers. I would say I always charge between 700 and 1,000 a day. And usually what I would do is, because the good point of negotiation was always like, okay, well, this is my rate for a day. That being said, what like, give me your business plan. What targets are we trying to achieve? So, I had a
Mm-hmm.
customer was like, okay, well, I want to make my first 25K in France by the time of 6 months or 3 months. And then I would negotiate massive
Mm-hmm.
bonuses. So
Oh,
I would
okay.
be
So it's
much more.
performance based as well.
That's not common. I liked it because, well, it was a great motivation, and usually because you're building the business plan together, the targets were often achievable. So yeah, that was pretty. So I would be like, okay, well, yeah, I take off 10, 15, 20%, but if we reach that, I'll get an extra 10K at that point or something like that.
Okay. And anytime founders have asked you to kind of take equity partially instead of full pay, or is that not common for the fractional space?
They never did.
Okay.
Interestingly enough, I did it the other way around. So I did offer like this type of deal for like as a founder. But as a fractional, I think I don't know. I mean, again, it was Berlin mostly, a bit of London, and maybe it has
Mm-hmm.
to do with the whole rocket internet space for those who are familiar with it.
Mm.
But founders were very, very protective of their equity, which I find actually
Mm.
people are a bit more relaxed about it in Southeast Asia. I find.
Yeah, they're relaxed about it on one hand, but I know, from TendoPay that our employees were basically not interested in equity. They would rather have the cash because maybe it's a culture thing, but they didn't really consider the long game whereby they could make X amount at an exit. They'd rather know what they're making every month and be within the average of the industry, right?
I fully agree. I think there's one difference between the fractional CMO and your employees, though, is that like as a fractional CMO, I would have been interested in equity for the same reason as VCs are interested in that. It's like also because I did not need the cash, because you end
Mm-hmm.
up taking at home a fair amount, like, your salary, like a very, very good amount of money. So even if you take 20, 25% out of that, or 50%, it's not going to change your lifestyle. So,
Right.
it's
Yeah.
not like the difference of where, and I wasn't in a moment of my life where I was like going to be like, okay, well, I need to buy a house right now or something, which
Mm-hmm.
wasn't that sensitive to cash. I think with employees, and especially like employees who are like, I guess the least you're paid, the least you are open to risk, which does make sense, right?
Yeah. It makes sense. Makes perfect sense. So let's talk a little bit about Scarlett Panda because it's a very exciting, like it's a very exciting industry. I love AI. I talk about AI a lot. I use it on a daily basis, and I've actually personally looked into creating stories using LLMs and all that. Side note: Scarlett Panda is a second time iterative company, right? I don't know if you're the only founder ever to go through the program twice, but let's talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, it is. I guess I left a decent impression, I hope. Yeah, I guess like there's the fact that like the first drift apart was genuinely just not something that was fully under my control. I do keep a good relationship with Iterative. I did help them there and there, like, when a lot of founders also had this fractional CMO problem. So I did jump on a bunch of calls with various founders who had issues figuring out what to do with marketing. Also have them at some point like looking through like initial decks. So I guess we kind of like maintain a good relationship. I also must like highlight the fact that like whether it's Sugan or Brian, like I just have like, I mean, they're amongst the people I have the highest opinion of in the whole professional world. So yeah, it just kind of happened. It also happened a bit by accident, in the sense of like we made Scarlett Panda for our daughter. It wasn't a company, it was a product that we made at the very beginning when this thing started to be kind of like coming out. So we're talking October 22. And then after that I did a stopover in Malaysia. So we're in Bali on a holiday, and because we just can't go to the beach like normal people, we decided to build a product. And we did a stopover in Malaysia because we had nice time and we just wanted more food from there. Yeah, big, like, Sugan was there at the same time. I was like, I never actually met him in person because of COVID. So I was like, okay, I'm gonna just show up at one of his talk, and I'm seeing if he's gonna recognize me. He did, and I mentioned quickly Scarlett Panda. I sent him over the deck. We had a quick talk. Then not many news from him. And then one thing that happened is that a US company contacted us to build something, contacted my co-founder slash husband to build something similar, and he was like, well, hey, you already built that, do you want to buy it? And the person was like, okay. They started to like talk about buying of MVP, and then I was like, okay, I'm just gonna drop a last line to Sugan about this, because I feel that if we have a product that somebody wants to buy before we even, like, if we're exiting a company before creating it, then there's something having potential here. And then it just happened. He was like, okay, let's go, let's do that. Please incorporate in Singapore. And I was like, okay.
Amazing. That's super. I mean, first of all, congrats on the potential acquisition before even building a product. It's not often like that. That's when you see there's a massive hype in an industry, right? It's pretty insane. So I have a bunch of questions now. First of all, to kind of wrap up on Scarlett Panda, how is that going? Are you still building it? Is that still like a very big commitment of yours? And how is that going so far?
So I mean, because it was so early on, like we're still at the pre-seed stage. One thing that happened is that like other people try to do things that are similar. On the bright side, what's also been happening is that we get a lot of learnings from the beginning, and Scarlett Panda is existing, Scarlett Panda is fine. Scarlett Panda tried to be B2B, Scarlett Panda tried different business models. The good news is that we actually know what we want to achieve in the next 6 to 12 months, which is this hybrid model. So this is extremely new, because I'm not sure how much detail I can get into with the business model, but for the moment, initially what we had was an app. You pay €4, $4, $10, whatever, or yearly plan. You get to use the app, create meditations, create stories, etc. Pretty classic. Problem with pouring a lot of money into marketing, even if we're roughly profitable if we do that. The main issue with that is that VCs are just not very confident with another app and another marketing-led D2C product. The other thing we looked into was B2B and selling it for schools to learn different languages. The problem we have, like that model, we have a lot of school interested, and we have like 15 of them have tried it. The issue with that model is more like slow moving schools and a very different audience. And we are D2C in nature, so we might not be the best people to achieve that. However, recently we're kind of moving towards making the app free, potentially advertising AdSense to monetize it a little bit. However, we're getting like hundreds and hundreds of profiles created with no marketing spend in the back of it. So we want to be the first AI story generator for children. That's fully safe. It has nice, cute images. It's educational. It's available in more than 100 languages. And the beauty of it is that you can request to print all of your individual books and get them delivered worldwide between 3 days and 2
That's
weeks.
amazing.
And
I can
basically,
already see applications. Sorry, I don't want to interrupt you. I think we had a lag. Finish what you were saying. Sorry.
yeah, no, that's it. Like, I think what I was just going to say is, like, I'm not sure if you're familiar with a company called Wonderbly, which is templated, and they
I'm not.
basically, it's, you put the name, it's like your classical little book of like, this, like, I don't know, you have a son called Gerald, and Gerald is a superhero, and then you pick the color of the skin, the eyes, and then get a small book. But we can do that 1,000 times better thanks to AI.
Okay.
And you still get the physical book. And then, I mean, printing books is not expensive. So you can have a
Yeah,
very,
yeah,
very
for sure. Print on demand. I'm sure you're using either an Amazon or a similar competitor. One thing that came to mind though, as you were talking about education, custom avatars, and all, is there a play where you partner with online schools, Khan Academy and whatnot, where you build an API towards your software and allow the students to create equivalent of a co-pilot, but in the educational program, where their tutor becomes this avatar that they've created themselves, so they have someone that they're bouncing around their whole online education with, but they're familiar with, they like that persona. I don't know, it sounds like there's a play there as well.
We've been toying with the idea of like the Chat GPT for children. So it's a mix between
Mm-hmm.
a pen pal or like a little avatar. So far there's no partnership in view. We potentially looking more into licensing. So we would like to have, if there's like a big, I mean, in French, you might remember something called choupi. But like you have these, like specific children, brands, Paw Patrol, whatsoever, like find one to partner with,
Mm-hmm.
and then you combine the technologies. Because children absolutely love the idea of like, being friends with like Elsa from Frozen in a book. It's actually, we just need to
100%. Yeah.
have the rights, right?
I just remember my experiences growing up with Microsoft Suite and the little paperclip being
Yeah.
my buddy, my companion with every question I had. I can see that in the education space where you, as a kid, your first step towards learning is you create your little companion, and then he'll be the one following you through the whole learning process. Whether it's you have a question about a course or when you're doing exercises and homework, he's the companion, right? I really like something that I think would be fascinating to look into.
Absolutely.
And so, follow up question that I had when you were talking. So, you mentioned that your husband is the co founder on this project. So, you're a family of founders, and that's actually quite rare. So, I'm curious, is that by design? Was he already a founder? Did he become a founder through this journey with you, or what's the story there?
We became co-founders at the incremental, the agency stage. That's mostly because we both from marketing, but he went into the data and then tech and development, and I went more into the corporate ladder of like senior marketer, head of CMO. And we realized that there was a lot of complementarity in our profiles, and we also tried to create our own marketing automation tools. What we felt that is actually selling them at a mass scale. So what we started to do then was like, well, I would be the marketer, the face. You would sell me as as a fractional CMO, but I will have the tool set that he builds to work faster, better, for my clients. So, and that's kind of how we started working together. And then with Scarlett Panda, the same thing kind of happened, is that he built it. I thought about marketing, brand identity, and the business stuff. Like that was always more me in general because I was just more experienced from the C-level
Mm-hmm.
experiences that I had in the past. So yeah, a lot of complementarity. I also had like in the past, like more or less co-founder frictions, which means that I would not necessarily there's not that many people I would team up with building a company.
Mm-hmm.
My husband is one rare one of them. And outside of that, because there's always the question of like, how do you actually do it? It sounds horrible. And the thing is with Alice, we actually met at the hot group. So we worked together before being together. We
Mm-hmm.
also worked together for a very long time. So there was always some sort of overlap between work and our relationship. And after spending years just thinking like, okay, what work-life balance and everything, I just kind of like decided that it's just life altogether. Like it doesn't matter in my life. Like
Mm-hmm.
founders work around the clock and then they burn out and they stop working for 5 years. I think you can find a way where like work is just part of your life. And yeah, there are moments where we talk about work at we're having dinner, and then there are days where we just don't talk about work. It's fine.
So there's no secret formula on your end. You haven't figured out that, no talk at the dinner table or things like that. Because couple of like people who are couples and founders, and especially founders together, it's a very fine line, right? You don't want to create too much conflict in your personal life, but as founders, you collide. That's just natural, right? So what's your secret formula there?
Oh, we fight. We fight. We try. We had to rescope a couple of times. I can get mean.
Okay.
He can
Oh,
close
okay.
up, like, I mean, we are usual, like, I don't know, like very familiar dynamic where like I bark and he just stops communication. But we just had like a bunch of like talks, which is one of them is like our relationship is more important than the company. I think that's essential
Mm-hmm.
because
Yep.
forces you to put your ego aside and put the relationship, which is also one of the reasons why other co-founders might like collide and not get back together. We have this priority, which is the fact that like we will not sacrifice our marriage over a company. And then in
Good.
general is yeah, I mean, it's the usual, like, non-violent communication as much as possible. Try to listen. If you feel heated, think about how you would react if it actually was your co-founder and not your husband. Like, don't say things you wouldn't say to your
Mm-hmm.
co-founder. And we got way better at it.
Okay.
Yeah, I think there was a at the beginning was hard, but we worked a lot of things out, and it's been a very long time we didn't have like an unhealthy debate.
Amazing. It does have its benefits too, though, because having both of you being founders, A, but for the same company, B, allows you to be super flexible, right? Currently, you're in Mexico City. You're able to travel. You're able to do all these cool things. So it does have lots of upsides as well, right? Things
Yeah.
that people don't talk about as much sometimes.
Yes, absolutely. And even in terms of like mutual support in general, like there's one thing that I don't know, I think I saw that on TikTok or something like that, but it was somebody saying like if you're in a relationship, it's not like both being 100%, or like if one is 80%, the other one can be 20 or something like that. It's like every day you kind of like listen to the other, and if the other one is tired and they're just not there. If he's 20%, I'm 40%, I will still, it's my duty to take a bit more on that day. And the beauty of like working together and
Mm-hmm.
everything is that, well, I can actually jump into his shoes and make progress move. Like I can help him with work.
Mm-hmm.
If he gets sick, I can step in. If our daughter or something happens, we can, like, there's no, we're working together toward the same. So it's not like him or me or who sacrificed his personal life for work. It's like, okay, what does your day like? What's my day? What's your day? Okay, well, I guess you're taking her to the doctor because I have this big meeting. I'm recording a podcast, whatever.
So you guys have a daily huddle and you discuss what the priorities are and how to split the tasks. Is that what happens?
You should, yeah, something similar. It's a bit more casual than that, but yeah, it tends to be.
Mm-hmm.
And in terms of like, if something comes up, then we always like compromise. It's very rare that we don't find a solution. And we take care of each other, which is
Amazing.
another thing, which is like one thing that's the beauty of like being husband and wife is like really like, it's also about taking care of the other and
Mm-hmm.
like making sure the other person's happy. I think that's something that like traditional co-founders, they don't really. I know it would sound weird for them to say that, but it's like it's kind of an innuendo that you want the other one to be happy, but you don't, they don't support or take care of each other. There's always adversity, competition,
Mm-hmm.
thinking that the other one's not pulling their weight. And
Mm.
these things don't happen when you're a couple.
I know what you mean. I know exactly what you mean. Been there for sure. Not only are you guys a couple of founders, you have a kid, so congrats to that. How old is your daughter, by the way?
She's turning 2 in 2 days.
Wow. Okay. Happy birthday ahead. So, being a founder and parent, that adds a layer of complexity, right? And it's something that I'm sure a lot of founders out there are always finding challenging, whether to prioritize building a business or starting a family. How do you manage both?
First of all, we called the company after the kid, Scarlett, so this way it's easier for
Oh,
like.
cute.
So her name is Scarlett, and she loves pandas. I don't
Okay.
know. I don't know. I'm a bit of an ovni because I've been a bit like I've been very independent for a very long time. Like I have worked again. Like I mean, again, if you get to some certain level of seniority, you kind of decide on your own structure. I mean, I'm not
Mm-hmm.
gonna. I'm like I don't want people to feel bad, but like I was in a situation where I was like doing this interim fractional CMO, and then I had a baby and I had a C-section, and like 48 hours after my C-section from the hospital, so I was dictating emails to my husband, and I did not take any parental leave. We just both went to 20
Wow.
hours per week. So I'm not. So that's the thing. Like I don't want to say that like this is what people should be doing,
Yep.
but if you really want to and health permits, you can do whatever you want, and you can also sort out a lot of things. Like I completely removed any friction from my life. So I live wherever I want to live. I get the help that I need help with.
Mm-hmm.
Like whether it's like, I like the only thing, like I like cooking, so I cook a lot. But like I removed I find like local, I have a VA that helps me find local schools when we have to move countries or something like that.
Mm-hmm.
I go, like, my thing is just I want to go to the gym 3 to 4 times per week, and I want to work, and I want to spend the weekend with my family, and everything else that's complicated I just removed from my life. So I have,
Amazing.
yeah.
So let's talk about the VA, because this is a big trend now, especially in North America, for CEOs and founders to have their own VAs. And you mentioned removing any friction from your life, right? So I'm sure the VA is a step in that direction. Can you talk a bit more about, first of all, what you have them do, how they're embedded in your life? Is it just personal? Is it professional, or is it both? How did you find them? And tell me about the experience. I'm really curious.
So I had I think it's just it started like with 2019. I didn't have a VA at the time, but I met my VA in 2019. She was doing customer service for a company I was working for. And it's just one of those people where, like, you start talking about like your personal life, and you're like, okay, you're doing this, you're doing that, that's great. You have a son. And like, it's just kind of happened. And when that company became bankrupt, she was being cut off. Like, I mean, like the people who are not even working, that were freelancers, like, they're the ones who are not getting paid. So I think it just started out of like trying to help and being like, okay, well, you know what, there's a bunch of small tasks in my life that I need help with. If that can help you while you find another job. So that's how it started. And then depending, it became more and more hours or less and less hours. What I have my VA do, I manage all of my own bookings and things like that, because I realized that there are some very peculiar things about, like, what you want in a hotel that doesn't necessarily transcend to someone else. But
Mm-hmm.
she will do, like, for example, for me, childcare is a big one. I need a school, I need a bilingual school wherever I'm going. So she reaches out to different schools, negotiates the pricing, make sure that, like, it's a decent place, do some research on that. She helps with there's a lot of spreadsheets everywhere. She helps with gathering information about visa situations. She helps, yeah, other things, other booking things. She helps. So that like on the personal level, like, yeah, she helps with these things. She helps with mostly the things that are like annoying conversations and back and forths that, just kind of stay in the back of.
Mm-hmm.
It's basically mental charge and load, and we're talking about like couple life, but I think this is also part of like having a healthy relationship. Is you can't, like, if you have a kid, if you have a marriage, if you have a company, if you have two companies together, the level of mental charge you get is huge as parents. So like you can unload some of those things to VA.
Yep.
And then professionally, I mean, she still continues to do customer service, especially with Scarlett Panda, management of
Okay.
comments on Facebook, Instagram, and then like other research tasks.
Yeah, that's very interesting. I've always been interested in getting one for myself as well. What I struggle with is kind of like you, when you're type A, you know exactly what you want and it's already in your mind. It's so hard to put it on paper, create an SOP, and make sure that you have the patience to train them exactly on your wants and needs, right? That's always been like the hurdle. So it's great that it's working out for you. It's something I'll be looking at in the future as well. Go ahead.
Quick thing on that one, Chat GPT is your best friend for translating what you want and for them to like figure out what you want. I've been it's been like helping
Really?
with the
Tell me
translation.
how do you leverage it? I'm curious.
I mean, it's gonna sound like a bit like tough, but like I tend to tell her more and more like just like ask Chat GPT. Like it's like if like there's a
Oh, I see what
notification
you
that
mean.
comes from like the how do I do that? How do I address? I haven't done that before. I don't know. And like just ask Chat GPT. And on my hand, it's always like there's this thing of like just also struggling to transcribe that one thing. Yeah, there's another thing that's very nice with AIs is like you know through like replicate is the one I use. I take voice notes. I don't want to impose my voice notes
Mm-hmm.
to other people because I hate when people give me the voice notes and then I spend 3 hours. Especially, I mean, as a French person, you're probably familiar with the. I don't want to put that on other people, but I do record myself, put it into a voice note, and then send the voice note. And yeah,
Okay.
whatever
And
works.
have you tried using or creating your own custom GPT? Create a Vivien GPT where you create a knowledge base of everything you've ever said or done or liked, and she can ask that GPT instead of just the pure Chat GPT. Have you looked into it?
Not yet. Does sound a bit scary. Because I don't think the problem is I'm not sure what I would train ChatGPT on. I think it's an interesting. I think it's an interesting view. I'm saying all of the things that I'm saying. Please note that it's also like it's not necessarily always perfect. Like especially the fact that like sometimes I don't realize I'm unloading a lot of tasks, and then you know it's also like I trust her to like keep track somehow of all of that, and then sometimes you know it's just
Mm-hmm.
this happen and something misses out, and like usually it's my fault, right?
So how do
Uh,
you keep track of it? Actually, that's a good question. Just because same in a company as a CEO, you have all these ideas where you're brainstorming with your team, and somehow you assume everything's going to be done, but sometimes things get missed, and you can't really blame your team. So I'm just wondering whether it's for your VA or as a CEO, how do all these ideas get tracked and you make sure that they get done?
I mean, we moved to G Sheet. We used to have Asana, but for some reason, I don't know if it's like if it's my VA circle or like, but like everybody's been quite reluctant using Asana. I personally am not a big fan of Trello, so we moved into a Google Sheet and then like you know priority 1, 2, 3, and then like a column that just says like well done and done.
This the base, the bare minimum. It always works best in the end.
Yeah.
Good stuff. So enough about work. You mentioned that you like cooking, you like going to the gym. What do you do for fun? What's your life outside of work? And I know as a CEO or founder, it's usually blended together, but let's try to separate them a little.
What do I do for fun? I eat. I eat a lot. I eat food. I eat the world. I eat everywhere. I go to every country and just eat everything. That's also like
Amazing.
especially in Southeast Asia. Um,
Mm,
and then I write a travel blog that for the moment
okay.
is
What's the
for the
blog?
it's called 6 Footprints. It's a work in progress because I still don't, wasn't planning on monetizing it. It was supposed to be more of a diary, but like now that everybody
Mm,
people who run into it start to say like, okay, well, this is exactly the type of resource we want to have as traveling parents. So yeah, there's that. The gym is just like a mental health thing because
mm-hmm,
I do need to. We talked about type A people, but like I do become
mm-hmm.
extremely irritable if I don't get my 3 to 4 hours gym time per week. We climb we climb volcanoes. That's a new thing.
Oh,
We did
when you say you climb volcanoes, so do you hike them or do you rock climb volcanoes
oh
somehow?
no we hike them. We have a 12 kilogram kid on the back.
Okay, yeah, fair enough.
But we did
That's cool.
recently some very nice one like the Rinjani in Bali. We did the
Mm-hmm.
Tongariro crossing in New Zealand, which is Mondoom from Lord of the Rings.
Nice.
So
Very
that
cool.
And in Mexico here, it's also like.
So specifically, you hike volcanoes. That's your thing. You don't want to hike anything else.
Yeah, I like yeah. There's something volcano, but volcanoes that's like kind of like dangerous and more
Yeah. I get it.
interesting.
Yeah, I mean, you have to like adventure and danger to come from Europe where everything is comfortable and go to Southeast Asia where it's, in my opinion, beautiful but chaotic at the same time. So in that line of questioning, you've lived in Southeast Asia for a bit. Any spicy adventures, anything very out of the ordinary happened to you while you were living here? Everyone has a story, so I'm just curious, what's yours?
There's been a lot. I think one was interesting was there was more of like it was a time where Asia was still a holiday place, but I got abandoned by my guide on the mountain between Thailand and Myanmar. Because he
Wow.
took, I think he took too much opium or something, and felt bad, and then just stayed there.
Wow.
And then it was us and a group of like 5 or 6 other people, and we had to find the tribe. And we were like there, and like it was also like a moment where like politically the situation wasn't so great, so we shouldn't go too far and get into
Mm-hmm.
Myanmar by accident. Um,
Yep. Yeah.
I know, just like for the funny thing that happened right now is that he was like, okay, you go and you go straight, right, left, like a 12 kilometer in the jungle thing. And I was like, yeah, and then you see a sign and you go right. And we're like, okay, what's written on the sign? He was like, you can't understand, it's in Thai. We're like, yeah, but if you write it down, you'll be able to see. And so he drew a sign and wrote sign in English on it and just gave us his,
My
and that was
God. Oh, wow. And you made
enough.
it, so that's good.
Yeah, I mean, we made it because we walked for a very long time. Then somebody, like some people of that group, like started to absolutely panicking because we're starting to run out of water. So we moved
Mm-hmm.
strategies and just started sitting down and screaming our lungs up until somebody from the village was probably still within that 3 kilometer radius, saw, heard us and came. Because that was our
Wow.
first level
That's
thing.
pretty scary, actually. That's pretty scary.
It was scary.
Yeah. Okay. Well, that's a really good one. I like that a lot. Little less scary. I'm curious about trends in Southeast Asia. I'm always asking other founders where they see the continent going. And to kind of go into that direction, I think the best question to ask is, if you weren't working on what you're working right now, is there something like a business that you think would be amazing to work on for Southeast Asia specifically, I would say?
It's a tough one. Like, in terms of, I had a thing for a very long time. Even though I eat meat, I had a thing for like the capacity of the region to make meat replacements. The reason
Mm-hmm.
why lab grown meat, the reason why there's obviously the ecological side of it. I also thought that even before those were like meat replacement or like fake meats were always good and tastier in Asia, even when it wasn't to be used as a meat replacement. And I find that like in general, like the same as the relationship with food, but like I use like the way the knowledge about flavoring and spices in general that you have there. There's a lot of
Mm.
interesting things that you can do in those industries. There was a company called Shiok Meat, was doing quite great in Singapore, like 5, 6 years ago. I'm not sure how they're doing now. But yeah, this is the type of industry that I think is very interesting.
Yeah, no, for sure. I mean, it's working really well. One of my friends launched a meat replacement company in France, doing really well. La Vie, I don't know if you've heard of it. They're killing it. But yeah, definitely an industry to look into for the ecological side at the very least. And as you're CMO, so you're probably on social media quite a bit, if not for research, for personal reasons. I'm always obsessed with new trends on social media and things that sometimes don't make a lot of sense. For example, I started watching, just for relaxation purposes, these channels where a guy is either landscaping, so cutting all this grass, and you're just watching a fast forward of him cutting grass, or like a guy doing car detailing, and I'm like, what am I watching? I'm sure those guys are absolutely killing it. So do you have any of those vices where you're watching social media things that make absolutely no sense? I'm always curious about the things that are working really well these days.
I mean, I see exactly what you mean. There's one where like it's a guy who just cleans the patios in front of people. That one is also like very nice. I know
Yes,
there's a
I
guy who
love
clocks.
that guy.
Yes,
So
it's
relaxing.
very neat. It just gets cleaner and cleaner. There's a guy who I really like, who's the Dungeon and Dragons of sandwiches. I think he's Australian. What he does is that
Okay.
he plays the Dungeon and Dragon dice, and Fifth
Yep.
decides his sandwich and his lunch. So depending on what
Oh wow.
he has, it makes a bread. And he's actually quite a foodie, and he just creates these like improbable sandwiches.
Mm.
Be honest, to tell you like how bad we are at like everything that's like about like healthcare and every like self-care is that before going to sleep and after reading, we do have this tradition of my husband where we watch like TikToks for like 15 minutes as like a end of day thing, and yeah,
Together or separately?
together. So we watch Sandwich Guy.
Together. Amazing.
We watch another Sandwich Guy
Who else?
who makes the sandwiches of history, like sandwich TikTok.
Wow. So you love sandwiches. That's cool.
Not that much. I just like the randomness of the ingredients coming together, and like sometimes it looks delicious, sometimes it's
Yeah.
very bad. It's weirdly like
Yeah,
we
you
don't.
kind of like to see people suffer as well, right? Like it's a vice in a way. You're just watching them.
Absolutely.
Very cool. So before I let you go, I'd love for you to shout out something on the pod if you have anything you want to, either personal or something you want to shout out for someone else. Just feel free to go ahead.
I'm not. Yeah, I'm not gonna do my husband because I think I've said already a lot of nice things about him. So I might like try to keep it a bit more balanced. Oh, actually, I'm going to be opportunistic on that one. Scarlett Panda and its hybrid model is going to go back full raise mode very, very soon. So
Mm-hmm.
to any angel VCs or anybody who's just genuinely interested in the product as it is, yeah, please find me on LinkedIn and add me and let's have a chat.
Amazing. So that's the pod. Thank you, Vivien, so much for being on. It was a pleasure, and I'm really hoping your raise goes well.
Thank you.